Dr. Fuller.
Good morning, Mr. Brown. How are you, sir?
I'm doing outstanding. I can't complain. Had a great Easter. How about you guys?
Cannot complain. My wife's parents live just about 50 miles from us, and her sister lives a mile from us. So we all descended on their house for the day. And my sister-in-law has triplets and an older daughter. So they have four daughters that are all between 6 and 10 years old. And that runs in right in with my two. So it was absolute chaos, which, is really kind of, I think, the icing on that particular cake certainly for my in-laws. So, but it's exhausting to be a parent in that environment.
Oh my God, I can only imagine running around all day.
How about you? You had the clan assembled, I noticed.
Yes, we did. Everybody came over. We had a big feast, and I resumed my duties as the annual Easter Bunny, so that was always fun. But actually, I had some help this year. We hid 184 eggs on our 5-acre farm.
For an infant that doesn't sleep through the night yet.
Correct. Well, the thing is, it's more of an adult Easter egg hunt than anything.
Okay.
But the kids love it.
Well, yeah, I saw your youngest son out there with his Easter basket cruising around in the picture that you posted. So,
oh yeah, they love it. We got Will Rhodes on. It says, "Good morning, Rich and Dr. Fuller from Missouri, coin number 2269." In the links in today's show notes, if you want to become a coin member of the American Warrior Society, get access to the training vault, get access to whether it's a physical fitness program, a medical program, an edge weapons program, less lethal program, shooting program, rifle, handgun, shotgun, and take your shooting to the next level. Click the links in today's show notes and find out more. Alan Kelly, our other good friend, is occupied Virginia, coin number 1571. Will Parker, OG in the house, coin number 800. He is riding in SoCal. Be careful down there, sir. Rudy is on, which is a wonderful time to talk about for those that will watch the replay or what have you. Rudy will be joining us next Monday. Myself and Dr. Fuller, we're going to analyze Operation Eagle Claw, formerly called Operation Rice Bowl. Some people know it as Desert One because that's where the failed Iranian hostage rescue plan unraveled out there in the deserts of Iran. It's 45 years ago this week is when it went down. So Rudy is going to join us, and we're going to break down what happened there at Desert One for those that don't remember, because it was a long time ago, Dr. Fuller.
It was. I certainly remember. Sadly, I was old enough to remember. Were you already in the Corps when that happened?
No. 1980? Come on, man. Jeez. I might look that old, but no, sir, I am not. No, I was living in Memphis. I was a 10-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Mark Hamilton is on from Canada. Good morning, sir. Let's see. We got Rasmick is on gold member. Good morning, sir. Please like and hit that share button. I'm not going to take up a whole lot of Dr. Fuller's time. We'll be on here for maybe 40-ish minutes. I want to get his thoughts on something. You went to a Jesuit prep school, I think it was?
I did. Bellarmine College Preparatory. Fine Jesuit education for men since 1851.
And we have lost our first Jesuit pope. What are your thoughts on that this morning?
Well, yeah, he had an interesting go, didn't he? I mean, you, like me, grew up with John Paul II was the Pope forever. Very impactful. He came in young. And I think after that, the graybeards in the papacy wanted an older Pope so they wouldn't have someone who was able to stick around for as long. But Pope Francis, as it was the name he took, is Francis the First, which I found interesting. 258 of these guys, 257 of these guys, and he's the first one to take Francis as a papal name. Was put in place in 2013, I believe.
Wasn't there a pope between John Paul and Francis who resigned?
Yes, yeah, and I think he's still. Did he pass?
I don't know.
But yeah, he resigned. First guy in 600 years that had done it. He said he was ill health, and he went ahead and resigned.
It makes you wonder what was the real reason.
Yeah, I mean, grumpy cynics like us, we kind of think, okay, that can't be the right thing.
Benedict, Michael reminds us.
Yeah, maybe he was ousted. Maybe, I don't know. But Yeah, Pope Francis is an interesting guy. First Jesuit, as you point out, often referred to as the Pope's stormtroopers. For those that don't have that background,
Somewhat accurately, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, they're the guys that oftentimes set up the underground church services in places that don't allow it. Like, for example, behind the Iron Curtain when it was still up, the Jesuits were the ones that were basically running clandestine cells, and instead of blowing up bridges and spiking railroad tracks, they would hold Catholic Mass. And it was often the Jesuits that would do that. And it was funny because, my experience at Bellarmine, the Jesuit priests that taught classes would be more than happy to argue a point with you on logic and reason. And if that didn't work, they'd take you into a boxing ring and just beat the crap out of you. I mean, it was an impressive display of both mental and physical prowess.
I've always admired that about it. Seriously, the Catholic priests that do make attempts at logic and reason instead of just it is what it is, and you're going to sit down and suck eggs on that one. Alan Kelly says our Lord allowed him to address his flock during Easter. Yeah, what an amazing time to go out. Easter Sunday.
Yeah, if that is your calling in life, what a way to go, right? You ascend to the top and then go out on Easter. So, but he was the first one born in the Americas.
That's right.
Native of Buenos Aires, and did a lot of his. I mean, he was ordained 68, 69. So he was a priest for a long time, and most of that time he spent in what they call them, favelas down there, the slums, and was really a dark horse when he eventually made it up into the Cardinals and had a very small cabal of folks that were pushing for him to ascend to the papacy in 2013. And he was not considered a front runner. And after, I want to say 5 votes, which is a ridiculously low amount, he comes waltzing out. And, he set the tone right off the bat. He had, as a bishop and then as a cardinal, he had eschewed the trappings of power. He had lived in small apartments, cooked for himself, took the bus or took cabs, didn't take his, chauffeured limo everywhere, didn't sort of go in for the regalia of the position. And then when he became Pope, he walks out on the balcony after he's been voted in, and there's a big traditional, robe that they wear, big cloak, and he just walked out, and his first words were "Good evening," and he just sort of was a very low key guy like that. Did some things that people in the Catholic religion liked, did some things that they didn't like. Now, mind you, I am not a practicing Catholic. I was, I often joke that I was force fed Catholicism starting at about 13. I don't have any particular axe to grind with them, and I certainly have reaped massive benefits from having gone to Bellarmine. But I just happen to know all this stuff because I just know all this stuff.
You've been to the Vatican, right?
I have not, and I'm embarrassed to say I would like to go, not for any religious reason, but just out of a secular interest in the history of the area. And I would like to see. I'd like to see the Sistine Chapel. I'd like to roam around there. So.
It's definitely worth it. We were there a couple of years ago, and man, I tell you what, I think the Jesuits are inside the Sistine Chapel. I don't know what those people were. You're talking about stormtroopers, man. People would try to sit down and look up, and they were not having it. These robes were snatching people, and
they absolutely would. They what's interesting though now is obviously they were founded as a military order. Guys that came back from the Crusades and still wanted to serve, so they kind of went in that route. Same as the Templars and the Hospitallers, only they're still kind of around and practicing. But they've really kind of aimed their martial prowess at education now. So it is not uncommon at all to find a Jesuit who's 50 years old and he's still in school, racking up his 6th or 7th master's degree, and they just bang it down and they teach. So,
yeah. Alan Kelly asked, "Isn't the Vatican its own government?" Yeah, it's its own sovereign entity. It's a matter of fact, a good Trivial Pursuit question is what country has a birth rate of 0?
Yeah.
Has an annual birth rate of 0, and it's Vatican. But,
Here's a
yeah,
fun.
amazing place. If you're in Rome, I couldn't encourage it more. You will probably be like me and every other visitor that goes there, and the wealth that is just on display. And I'm sure that what's in their archives, is 10x that. It's mind-boggling. I mean, any one square foot of any hallway in the Vatican has probably $100 million in artifacts. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, and going back to Pope Francis, he was pushing for the church to become a poor church, administering to the poor. That was sort of his kind of touchstone, his desire where he wanted to take things.
They do have a problem in Latin America, and I was hoping he would do more to solve that. And the problem is infant mortality. And unlike us Protestant ilk, the concept of original sin isn't quite what it is in the Catholic Church, in as much as if you have high infant mortality and the priest is, on the other side of the Andes, can't get to you for however long, and your child dies, the child is going to hell. I mean, that's pretty much, it's a very uncomfortable thought. However, that's kind of what the belief is, I believe. And that's a problem for the Catholic Church, especially in the Americas. And I hoped he would have done more to solve that problem. I don't know that he did.
I don't know they did either. And I'm not going to try to pretend I'm a papal lawyer, but that's one of the things that kind of broke my, not to get into my particular belief system, but that's one of the many reasons I strayed from that route in life is that sort of belief system. Funny thing about the Vatican you were talking about earlier, do you know how long the Vatican has been its own country?
I would say, I don't know, maybe 1,000 years or more.
I would have too. No, it's been its own city-state. It was its own little place. Mussolini made it its own country.
Really?
Yeah, he was tired of the Catholics and the papacy kind of interfering with Italian rule. Now, mind you, Italy was only a country. It became a country in the late 1800s, early 1900s.
Yeah.
Before that, it was just a collection of city-states and what have you. So, he got tired of sort of their meddling, and he really wanted to have a definite delineation between church and state. And yes, no, cool. Sorry,
I love it.
There's a desire for pretzels. Thank you for being quiet, hon. So so he kind of, rather than have sort of a constitutional barrier, he said, "No, how about this? You're holding this. How about I give you your own little country?" And so
I would have never guessed that.
I mean, I don't want to say that the Vatican hasn't existed for that long. I don't want to say that the Vatican wasn't its own, again, city-state when you had places like Verona and Capua and all that shenanigans. But Italy as a country hasn't been around that long, and they didn't really need to make the Vatican its own country for a while. So once they decided to do it, Mussolini's like, "Yeah, I've had enough of this."
I tell you, I've been interested in the Swiss Guard, but I don't know much about them. The Pope's little secret army. I definitely need to read up on that. I find that fascinating.
Yeah, they got hired in as mercenaries, and they just did the gig. And it's funny because you think of them as being the guys in the pantaloons and the halberds and the striped shoes, and that's what they do. But they're also the Secret Service.
100%.
They are no joke. They are not to be trifled with. They have nation state backing, and as you point out, it's a wealthy nation.
Oh my God.
So
yeah. Alan Kelly says, "I love it too. Nothing better than family." Dr. Gordon Botson is on, coin number 1688. Brian says, "Born and raised in the Episcopal Church, we're often described as Catholics without the Pope." Ted is on. John Shriver is on. Swiss Guard has recruitment issues. Wow. If I were a younger man. But I am not. Alas, Dr. Fuller, I am not.
Alas and alack. Time is fleeting.
It is. It's a shame. But yeah, so have you watched The Conclave, that new movie with Ray Fiennes?
Is that also Stanley Tucci in that one?
I think yes.
I've seen the ads for it, but I have not watched it.
I think I will watch it tonight just to.
Yeah, probably a good time to do it. I get confused on what streaming system, agency handles what. So I want to watch X, and I can't think of who's got it. So
usually Prime does a pretty good job if you have Amazon Prime. Michael Gentili says, of all the good things the Catholic Church has done, the phrase "boys' pants half off" has a different meaning if you're a sucker.
That's just
Mr. Gentili, sir.
Well, we walked in when I was up in Vermont. As an FBI agent, the scandal was exploding, right, with the Catholic priests, and there was a Cohegan hadn't been murdered in prison yet, but he was still getting jammed up. And I was in an office with 6 agents, myself, 4 Irish Catholics, and an Italian Catholic. And we were going to lunch one day, and we'll walk in, and 2 Catholic priests walked out of the restaurant we were walking into. And I turned around and go, after they had walked away, they were out of earshot. But, hey, fellas, are those uniformed pedophiles? And I thought they were going to take me outside and just shoot me. 5 of them were not happy. And I'm like, guys, if the Catholic Church was IBM, we would have indicted the organization and broken it up as a criminal conspiracy for what they were doing. And this is a criticism that I think Pope Francis took rightly, is that he didn't do enough to not only cleanse the church of that stain, but to drive home the perception that he had done enough. You know what I'm saying? So not only he didn't clean house, he wasn't perceived as having done enough. A lot of people took issue with that, and rightfully so in my mind.
And I'm gonna tell you right now, a lot of people don't realize this, but the officer class especially in the Marine Corps is grossly represented by Roman Catholics. Not that I have any issue with it. There is something in that religion. Maybe it's the hierarchical nature. I don't know, that seems to pull people into structured organizations like the FBI or the Marine Corps. Because it occurred to me one day, I'm like, all the senior officers in the district command staff were Catholics, and they all come back with the ash on their forehead, and it suddenly dawned on me, like, holy cow. They all go to church together. They all, they go to mass together. They take the Eucharist together. They do this and that. And Protestants not welcome. Matter of fact, one time, one of them said, "Hey, why don't you go?" And I didn't. I'm like, okay. So I thought we were going to take communion, and they march everybody up there, and I go up there to get it, and I'm supposed to say something in Latin, but I don't know what to say. And the priest, refused to give me communion. Like, nope, Protestant. Eat it. And but wow. So which is fine. Kind of shocking, but we threw the Catholics out of Scotland in 1574, I think it was, and never looked back.
Yeah, and let's face it, there are no wars like religious wars, right? People get get the approbation of their God, and they go to town. It's never a good look.
No, and I tell you, the Craig Holland is on here from the UK, and I was looking at some stats in the UK. I saw a stat. I don't know if it's believable, but I kept looking, and I keep coming up with the same number: 1,500 mosques in the Greater London metropolitan area.
Wow,
1500. And if you look at the major towns in England, their mayors are all Muslim. And it's like you got 4 million Muslims and of course, we're just talking about religion this morning, so I'm not pointing out whatever. I'm just saying 4 million Muslims out of a country of 67-ish million, and somehow they have really overtaken the political sphere. And if demographic data is to continue, because they're having 6.8 kids per married family unit, they're going to, within 50 to 100 years, I mean, the UK will be a predominantly Muslim country. It's just a math problem at this point.
That's interesting to think that someone could outbreed the Irish. That's go big or go home, I guess, huh?
Well, let's see. We've offended Catholics this morning, the Irish, Jesuits. Who else are we going to tackle this morning?
Well, and this is a good point, though, Rich. I think there's far too much animosity in our society these days that we can't just have a discussion of difficult topics, and religion's one of them. Religion is a very sensitive topic, and it can, as you say, we can offend people very easily. But obviously, that's not my intent. That's not your intent. We're just simply having a conversation, not judging. I think that the audience that's watching right now understands that, and I think we should be able to have those conversations. I think we should be able to have a disagreement on these things, and say I see it differently, without destroying friendships, without destroying connections that we've built on a variety of other factors. And I know it's true of you. It's certainly true of me. I have plenty of friends who are not co-religionists of mine. My wife and I don't share the same religion or religious views. And we like Canadians too, Mr. Hamilton.
We love Canadians.
Those guys are awesome. So, we're so close to the border. The folks in the Francois in Quebec can be a little annoying sometimes, but beyond that, you guys are great. But yeah, so it's.
Well, you and I agree with that. I mean, the ability to engage in intellectual discourse is one of the things I'll prize in other people, and to at least turn the map around and like try to look at it from the other person's point of view, what kind of terrain they're sitting on, circumstances and that are driving the decisions they make. And there's a whole host of things that go into that. And I love those kind of respectful conversations. Craig reminds us that 48% of Londoners are foreign born.
I didn't know that.
Insane.
Wow.
Dr. Gordon Botson says, I went to a Catholic wedding once as a +1, and they had a full mass. The priest said something like, quote, if you accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, come forth and partake. I was the only person who sat down. I believe Dr. Gordon Botson is Jewish. Let's see here. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Botson. Craig says, I just think it's ironic. Well, I want to get to other than that one. No, I'll say his comment. I just think it's ironic that the Romans killed Jesus and the head of the churches in Rome. Yeah, it's funny how things change. I know where I was going with that, Dr. Fuller, because you had mentioned that you said something humorous about the pedophilia. Not that there's anything humorous about it, but to your colleagues, and they were taken very offense. I had the exact same experience. And that's another time that it reminded me that I said something off the cuff. And I mean, all the senior officers, I'm just a chief warrant officer. So the colonel, 3 lieutenant colonels, a couple majors snapped their head around at me. And one of the lieutenant colonels is like, hey, Rich, you want to freaking go to mass with me right now? Tell the priest that right now on the island. Yeah, because we're on Paris Island. I'm like, no, sir. And, but yeah, man, they don't. And I get it. I mean, yeah. but at the same time, do something about it. Dr. Gordon Botson says I'm right. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was my big problem with that whole scandal is, it's one thing that these things happen. It's bad enough that someone uses a position of trust and authority and abuses it on the most easily victimized, least defendable, or least defensive amongst us. Mm-hmm. It's a whole nother story for then the organization to, rather than fix this problem, to shuffle you around and play a shell game and to hide you from authorities and move you someplace else and not tell anybody that this is your particular burden to bear, if that's the perspective you have on it. And just basically allow you to continue to be a serial molester.
Yeah.
I find that reprehensible and inexcusable, but such as me. And then to turn around and tell people, look, you won't say anything because, and then you invoke religious reasons why they can't say anything. And I'm like, that's just a massive abuse of power. But
yeah, there's some great documentaries out there on this, and I encourage people to watch them. This is a systemic problem, and there's a whole host of reasons why the problem is what it is and the magnitude of what it is. But I want to skip over to, since Dr. Botson is on, the interesting thing about Judaism is, and as I understand it, Dr. Botson, there are ethnically Jewish folks, and then there are practicing Jewish folks, and there are Orthodox Jewish folks. I'm sure there's a gradient in there for each. But Douglas Murray has a new book out that is top on my wish list. It's called On Democracies and Death Cults, Israel and the Future of Civilization. And he is the one that wrote The Strange Death of Europe and the Madness of Crowds. Huge fan of Douglas Murray's work. And he was recently on Joe Rogan and got himself in a bit of trouble. There's a comedian on there who's pro-Palestinian, and Douglas Murray just took his ass to task. And I had some friends that they thought that his accent was too posh and he came across as too elitist and some of these other things. I'm like, this is ad hominem. I don't give a shit. Let's talk about his positions. Yeah, but I get Dave Smith is a comedian, no disrespect, with a high school education, whose only claim to fame is that he's a friend of Joe Rogan, who has the biggest podcast. He's never been there. He's never wrote books on it. He has no lay of the land. I think he's a former, one of these people that are ethnically Jewish but not practicing, and for some reason has an axe to grind against Israel. But it's like, brother, I don't know what gives you a seat at the table to have these conversations about shit that you don't have any clue about. Douglas Murray has been there on both sides, embedded with the leadership, embedded with the fighters on the ground. Has written books about it, and he's got a BA from Oxford. I mean, very intelligent guy, but because of the way he communicated his ideas, people were put off by it, and it's a shame.
Well, if you can't attack his argument, attack him, right?
Right.
There's a saying in the legal profession that if the law is on your side, pound the law. If the facts are on your side, pound the facts. Uh-huh. If neither the facts nor the law are on your side, pound the table. And that's an example right there, I think, of pounding the table.
Yeah.
And look, I obviously I'm not Jewish, but I have lived over there. I was in the Sinai for a year. I spent a lot of my free time in Israel. I didn't live in Israel, but I spent a ton of time over there. And it's a very complicated set of circumstances they're living in. I mean, it's a country that has a ton of immigrants. They are infused with Arab members of the Jewish faith and Muslim faith. You've got major locations from 3 of the world's major religions inside of Israel. You have obviously a lot of violence. You have a lot of religious perspectives tied up. I saw a lot of racism by the Arabs. I saw a lot of racism by the Jews against the Arabs. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of experience behind that feeds into this narrative. There are a lot of people that have their own perspective that get up on a bully pulpit and beat on it, telling you to do X, and this guy is the problem. This is why it's caused you a problem. There are people that have lost family members on both sides to, military violence, paramilitary violence. It is a very, very difficult and complicated set of circumstances. Mm-hmm. And, if you're just an average Israeli, whether you're Arab or Druze or any other thing, just living there can be difficult. I mean, when I was there, and we've talked about it on the show before, there was a bombing campaign being run by a guy called the Engineer. Mm-hmm. And I mean, things were blowing up left, right, and center. And there's a mall in, is it Dizengoff Street? I think it's Dizengoff Street.
We're at Jerusalem or Tel Aviv?
Right. Yeah. Right downtown in Tel Aviv. And all the entrances are guarded. They were at the time. I assume they still are. And metal detectors in the whole nine. I had just come out of that mall and was walking down the street. I was walking to the beach. It was a little bit of a hike, but I was walking down to the beach because there was a Planet Hollywood down there back when that was still operational. And I guess about the time I was leaving and heading down the road, this knucklehead in the middle of the summer in a trench coat tried to get in. And he got turned around at one of the entrances. So he went to a different entrance, tried to get in there because he wanted him to take his coat off and go through the metal detector. He didn't want to do it. And of course, it's 90, 95 degrees out, and he's wearing a trench coat, which is obviously a clue. And so he goes to a second entrance. They turn him away there because, the Israeli guards, even the security guards there, they don't screw around.
No.
And so he walked down the street, went to a major intersection, and it's like a New York City intersection that you see in movies, right? There's a big crowd of people on one side of the street, big crowd of people on the other side of the street. Light turns green, everybody goes. So both crowds meet in the middle. He's in the middle of it, and then he sets himself off. Suicide bomb. Blows himself up. So I'm 2 blocks away when I hear this kaboom. I was a bomb disposal guy, so I'm like, bomb went off. I'm going to go see. Not the smartest thing. I probably should have just kept on going, but I went back, and it was the stuff of nightmares. I mean, It really was. It was, the equivalent of a satchel charge full of nails and poison going off in a crowd of 30 or 40 people. It was bad. It was really bad. And I don't want to get overly graphic, but there were the military personnel here, especially in the police, your imagination doesn't hold a candle to what actually happened. Well, if you lose your child in that, and maybe you lose a leg, are you ever going to be okay with people on the other side of that fence?
No.
And by the same token, if the vengeance comes and the Israeli military drops a 155 round in the middle of your village and it kills your kid or takes your leg, are you ever going to come off of that? You're just not. And you have so many factors and so much going on there. It is just an absolute diplomatic nightmare. And I don't know how you're ever going to solve it. I really don't.
No, because Stan McChrystal, I think it was him, and he was the general in charge of, I don't remember what he was in charge of, JSOC or USOC, whatever. He had a thing where he said, if there's 10 terrorists and I kill 2 of them, how many terrorists are left? And people say 8? No, 20. Because the 2 you killed had cousins and brothers and fathers, and now you just made more of them. If they were already on the fence, now they're going to get their jihad on. So it's a problem that's amazing. And Craig says, I think it's strange that wars are fought on who has the best imaginary leader. Isn't that something?
Even if you don't motivate those 20 people to pick up a gun or a bomb or a rock or whatever, maybe now they give money. Maybe now they give you a safe house to stay in.
Or they give you a pace count. It's 20 paces between this and this, because I know you can't get in there, but I can, because whether you're not an MS-13 gang member, I mean, it could go anywhere. I don't have the tattoos, but I can
go courier. I'll vote. I'll vote in your favor. I'll vote for Hamas. I'm not going to strap a bomb on. And the Israelis, man, look, if you're a suicide bomber, they do not dick around, right? So you blow yourself up. They figure out who you were. They go and bulldoze your house.
I love it.
Yeah, but then you've got 3 generations of people living in that house, and you've just made them all homeless. So to Stan McChrystal's point, is there a better way to recruit?
Well, we had a thing too, Dr. Fuller, and I don't know if this is still going on, but it was alive and well in the 90s when I was a police officer, and that was if we catch your son dealing drugs in the projects, you and grandmama are out of here. You know what I'm saying? So we're taking, and then you put where do those people go? And of course, the hatred for the cops just becomes a big generational problem. Like,
and I understand the idea that you want to disincentivize the behavior. I get that. But you have to look at the downstream effects too. And maybe you still decide to do it. Maybe you say it's worthwhile. Like maybe you say, okay, you're out of the projects. It's worthwhile. We're going to have to deal with that. But the cost benefit ratio works out in our favor. But those the complexity.
Tony says, is there a better way to abolish? So that's an interesting question. I was at dinner one night with my lovely bride, Miss Lisa, and we were under a palm tree and there in Beaufort, South Carolina. And this guy sitting next to me, he asked for, do you guys live here? What's something good on the menu? And I'm like, oh yeah, we told him. Oh, do you don't live here? Are you visiting? He says, I'm Dr. So-and-so. I've been invited here by the commanding general to give a lecture on Islam and yada, yada, yada. Islamic terrorism. I said, oh my God, great to have you, sir. He's written all these books. I wish I could remember his name. And I said, so between 2 guys having martinis, what's the answer? And he goes, you really want to know it? And I said, yeah. And he goes, and he does this. There's only the kinetic solution to this problem. I'm like, ugh. When somebody who's in their 60s, who studied this for 45 plus years and written all the books about it, and that I have one solution. And I'm like, Jesus.
And that's a brutal solution. And obviously one that offends our delicate modern sensibilities.
Yeah.
But look, if somebody's just interested in hitting you in the forehead with a crowbar and you want to talk to them, you're not going to have a conversation. Mm-hmm. And so I understand the utility of the argument that, okay, I'll shoot that guy in the face. Mm-hmm. And then maybe the next guy wants to hit me in the head with a crowbar. I'll shoot that guy in the face. How far down that path are you going to go until you find somebody that is willing to put down the crowbar and have a conversation?
I'm going to take that position because I agree with you. I wanted to find out, like, just strategic bombing. And what I mean by strategic bombing is just fucking pardon my French, just carpet bombing something into the Stone Age, right? If that showed any kind of efficacy long term, and I mean, every paper I could find that was authored on the subject was it does not work for the same reasons we just described. And it's like, wow, you would think that, man, if they were carpet bombing my village, I'd be like, no mas. Where do you want me to sign? But evidently not, you know.
Well, it's like torture, right? Torturing people as a questioning, as an interrogation methodology, tends to just harden their hearts. You know, it makes them tell you whatever they think will make you stop torturing them. You look at pre-World War II, there was a huge group within the U.S. military and the British military that were proponents of air power. That said, look, the next war we can win with steel, not flesh. We'll just bomb people into submission. And they tried it, right? Tried it with Japan, tried it with Germany. And, you know, I think there's an argument to say, oh, well, you're going to impact their production numbers. Well, in the case of Germany, their production numbers were rising. Now, they were playing a few little games with some of their accounting procedures, and it did slow things considerably. But we used to go after their ball bearing plants. That was our ball bearing plants. And then we decided we're going to unhouse their workers. That was the other euphemistic phrase.
Dresden.
For carpet bombing the entire neighborhood, because they couldn't hit anything, right? Oh, we have the Norton bomb site. We're going to be able to drop the bomb right on a pickle barrel.
Nope.
So then they, rather than say, well, okay, we're screwing that up, we're just going to kill everybody, they said, well, we're going to unhouse them. We're going to burn their houses down. But it still didn't impact the will to fight. And does it have an impact on everything else? Sure it does. And, you know, like what really caused our collapse of German manufacturing, for example, was going after the Reichsbahn. You know, when they finally blew up enough trains and railroad tracks, they finally got them off the path of higher production, mostly because they couldn't transport raw materials and produced goods, but they were still building stuff. And the people were still willing to fight. I mean, some of the worst fighting in World War II in Europe was in 1945. When you look at the casualty rates for U.S. forces and British forces, they're just astronomical. And the Germans were still fighting. Pardon me. Yes, no. No, but there will be a little bit.
Family-friendly show, folks. That's what you get right here every morning.
That's right. And my apologies to the audience. But you know, people fight, and carpet bombing them, it has an impact, but it doesn't have it's not the silver bullet. It's not the panacea that we like to hope it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, you know, Ted says General Barrow told me after a while the guy realized he's not dead. It comes down to boots on the ground, in my view. Yeah, that's exactly right. Until you have a freckle-faced 18-year-old kid on every street corner, you know, and he's dating one of the local girls and learning the language, and we're having cross-cultural connections here like we did in Japan and Germany. You know, those that's kind of how it ends up. We end up winning. But Dr. Fuller,
the Romans did, right?
The Romans absolutely started, and which was another interesting thing. You can go way down the rabbit hole on that. They're bringing German girls back down across the Danube, across the Rubicon, back into Rome, and these blonde-haired women caused a stir. And every Roman housewife now had to dye her hair blonde, and to varying degrees of success. So there's a lot of interesting thing there. But Dr. Fuller, let's remind folks where they can pick up a copy of one of your 3 amazing books, and let's also remind them what we have coming up next Monday morning.
Well, certainly. My books are available at tcfuller.com. You can follow the links from there, or you can go straight to Amazon, get them there. Members of the American Warrior Society are certainly welcome and invited to contact me, and we'll work something out, get you a signed copy, no problem. As far as next week, I'm looking forward to that, the Eagle One conversation about the failed attempt to rescue the American hostages in Iran in 1980. And I look forward to having that conversation with you, Rich.
Yeah, and I too. And we will be joined, of course, by retired Colonel Rudy, who's on this morning. And Rudy is a special operations aviator for the Air Force, or was, I should say. And Rudy's going to join us, and we're going to have a lengthy discussion, because it's 45 years ago. It was a huge failure, but we wouldn't have the special operations community in America we have today if it weren't for the price we paid in blood in the deserts of Iran. So there's Rudy. So looking forward to it, as am I. Mark says, have all three, need more. Yeah. Well, more. You need to get on it, Dr. Fuller.
I'm working on it, brother. I'm working on it.
All right. Well, be safe, my friend, and we'll talk to you later.
All right. Take care, because, the fight is coming. Be ready.